So my husband comes from a traditional family. Mom's a stay-at-home mom. Father was the sole provider. I come from the opposite. My mother pretty much forbade me from ever being financially dependent on a man and drilled that into me early on. My husband worked hard to unlearn the values he saw replicated at home. He often, more than, pulled his weight at home, was an engaged and present father and a genuine partner. The one thing that bothers me is how much importance he puts on the opinions of his family. I understand that we all want our parents to be proud of us, but this is too much. My in-laws are staying with us for 2 weeks. Our usual routine is that I prepare breakfast, we all eat lunch at work school, and my husband makes dinner. We have a cleaner, but she's on vacation, so in the meantime, we're doing the cleaning ourselves where everyone has to keep their space clean, and we all clean the common areas. This is how we've always done it, and it works. My in-laws dislike that I'm one of those modern women. They dislike that I work. They dislike that I don't find my purpose in being a wife and mother. And they dislike that my husband shares household responsibilities. We had a frank conversation early on, where I established my boundaries and told them that I won't be criticized about how I live my life in my own home. When I am a guest in their home, I adapt to their ways and behave as the daughter-in-law they wish I was. They have, for the most part, respected this. Yesterday after work, I came home tired and hungry. I usually get home at 6, 6:30, and we eat at 7 o'clock. I quickly greeted everyone and went upstairs for a shower before dinner. When I came back downstairs, I went to the kitchen to help set up for dinner and found nothing prepared. I asked my husband about it, but he wouldn't look at me, and his mother answered that he hadn't cooked anything. She told me I needed to fulfill my duty as a wife and cook for my family. My coward of a husband still wasn't looking at me. I simply walked away and ordered takeout. I served myself and my kids, and we sat down at the table to eat. My husband and his parents served themselves and joined us. My mother-in-law continued to criticize me and question what was wrong with me. I asked my husband if he had anything to say. He said his mother had a point and it wouldn't hurt if I acted more like a proper woman and took better care of my home and children. He said tradition was tradition for a reason, and it was kind of insulting that I thought I was too good for how he was raised. This is where I might be in the wrong. I told him that tradition wouldn't allow a man earning $35,000 to support a family of 5, and he was too broke to be so sexist. He looked hurt, and I saw tears welling up in his eyes. He excused himself from the table. I regret saying this in front of our children, but him saying that to me after I've been working hard to clean up his mess on top of dealing with his parents was just too much for me. Am I the jerk? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. I understand that you want to present a united front to the kids, but he said that about you in front of them, and that is not an idea you want taking root in your children's mind. He was banking on you bowing to peer family pressure to get away with this disrespect of you and your family's normal way of division of labor. He gambled and lost on that, and I am really proud that you did not bow down just because his parents were there or that the kids were in the room. Too many people let things like this slide so as not to upset the apple cart. This is all on him. He decided it was better for him and easier for him to risk your feelings than stand up to his parents. He chose to upset you versus upsetting his mother. I honestly would not have let them have any of the takeout food. I would have probably taken my kids and left to have dinner with just me and the kids. Comment 2. Obviously not the idiot, but I do have to wonder, what exactly has your husband and parents-in-law been saying about you amongst each other? Doesn't sound like your husband is stopping any malicious slandering. Sounds more like he's joining in. More than that, how much of what they've slandered you about was said in the hearing of the kids? Little mice have large ears, and kids have a habit of eavesdropping when the adults gossip about their parents. There is a huge crisis in your marriage right now since your husband basically betrayed you, like literally took what you agreed on, equality, and trusted him with your children, and did the opposite of what you trusted him to do. It's a betrayal. I'm sorry you are dealing with this. I'd be interested in hearing what he has to say for himself when you talk to him. And you must talk to him about it ASAP. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post and for all your support. It's been a wild couple of weeks since then, and I've got a lot to fill you in on. So after that disastrous dinner, things were pretty tense in the house. My husband barely spoke to me for the next few days, and his parents kept giving me these disapproving looks. I tried to just focus on work and the kids, but it was hard with all the awkwardness at home. About a week after the blow-up, my husband finally came to me and apologized. He said he'd been thinking a lot about what I said and realized he hadn't been fair to me. He admitted that he sometimes falls back into the traditional mindset he grew up with, even though he knows it's not right. We had a long talk about how we both need to work on communicating better and standing up for each other, even when it's hard. I thought that would be the end of it, but then a few days later, my mother-in-law cornered me in the kitchen. She started going on about how I'm not a good wife and mother, and how I'm ruining my family by working and not taking care of the house. I tried to stay calm and explain my perspective, but she just wouldn't listen. Finally, I snapped and told her that if she couldn't respect the way we do things in our own home, maybe she should leave. She looked shocked, but then she got this really cold look on her face and said that maybe she would. She went and found my father-in-law, and I heard them talking in hushed tones in the guest room. That evening, they announced that they were cutting their visit short and leaving the next day. My husband tried to convince them to stay, but they insisted. As they were packing up, my father-in-law pulled me aside and said he was disappointed in me for not being a better wife to his son. I was so angry, I couldn't even respond. After they left, my husband was really upset. He kept saying how he felt caught in the middle between me and his parents. I reminded him that we're supposed to be a team, and that means standing up for each other even when it's not easy. The next week was rough. My husband was moping around the house, and I could tell he was really torn up about the situation with his parents. I tried to be understanding, but I was also frustrated that he wasn't being more supportive of me. Things came to a head when I overheard him on the phone with his mom, complaining about how I just don't understand their family's values. I confronted him about it later, and we ended up getting into a huge fight. I told him I was tired of always being the bad guy, and that if he wanted a traditional wife, he should have married someone else. He said he loves me for who I am, but he also loves his parents and doesn't want to lose them. We went back and forth for a while, both of us getting more and more upset. Finally, I asked him point blank whose side he was on, mine or his parents. He got really quiet for a minute, then said he was on my side, always. He promised to talk to his parents and make it clear that he supports our partnership and the way we've chosen to live our lives. I could tell it wasn't easy for him, but true to his word, he called his parents the next day. He told them that while he respects and loves them, his loyalty is to our family first. He said if they can't accept that, then we'll have to limit our contact with them going forward. I know it was a really hard conversation for him to have, but I was so proud of him for doing it. Since then, things have been a lot better. We've been talking more openly about our expectations and needs, and working harder to support each other. My in-laws haven't reached out, but my husband says he's okay with that for now. He knows it's going to take time to rebuild those relationships, but he's committed to putting our family first. So that's where we're at now. It's been a challenging couple of weeks, but I feel like we're coming out of it stronger as a couple and as a family. Thanks for letting me vent and for all your advice and support along the way. It really means a lot. Am I the idiot for refusing to let my mother move in after she wrecked my brother's marriage? Throwaway account because my main has personal information. My 34-year-old mother has not worked for the last approximately 30 years. When we were little, Dad worked, and she was a stay-at-home mom. She refused to work even when we were older. I remember my parents fighting about it. After their divorce, Mom remarried almost instantly and relied on her much older husband, who died last year, leaving everything for his adult children and almost nothing for her. After the death of her second husband, Mom moved in with my brother and his wife. She was supposed to look after their kids while they work. This didn't work out, and they are kicking her out, which is totally my mom's fault. I told her multiple times this would happen if she continued to act like she did. She was extremely mean to my sister-in-law, tried to run their household, acted like the queen, refused to watch the kids full-time, which was their original agreement. She only watched them for half a day twice a week, and when she did, she neglected them, like not changing a poopy diaper for God knows how long, because she was hoping my sister-in-law would be back soon and do it. This resulted in the baby getting a very nasty rash, etc. Now she wants to move in with me. She's claiming she'd help with my kids. I have a 2-year-old. I told her no. I saw what happened to my brother and sister-in-law. You caused major issues in their marriage, and I will not risk it. After all, you always told us adult children should never live with their parents. Yes, we were both kicked out at 18 right after we finished school. She started crying and saying she doesn't have anywhere to go. She has until the end of the month to leave my brother's house. I told her neither did I when she kicked me out at 18, and I went to live on my friend's couch. But I worked and eventually rented a room, so I guess that's what she should do. That's what everyone else does. She asked me to at least pay her rent until she gets back on her feet. I said no, you're a healthy working-age person. You should not be freeloading. That's exactly what she told me when I was 18. We had a very big fight, but I refused to let her move in or give her money. I'm sure she should still have some from her inheritance, and I know for a fact my brother gave her money, so I didn't feel guilty at all. Now, multiple relatives are texting me, basically saying that my sister-in-law and I are horrible people. My mom's dead husband's son called to scold me, telling me that my mom is my responsibility and not theirs, so I should do what's right. I do not feel guilty, but perhaps that's what makes me the AH, am I? I do feel bad about people claiming I'm a bad daughter, mainly because my mother was never a model mom herself. She never put her kids first and was generally disinterested in us unless she needed something. I mean, if she were nice, I'd be happy to have her near. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. You have the benefit of knowing exactly how she will act. If you take her in, you'll probably suffer every single day until you kick her out. Depending on how much money your brother gave her and how much she got from the inheritance, I might consider kicking in a little extra just to completely wash my hands of the situation. But you're totally justified giving her nothing. And the fact that she's similarly pestering and guilting her husband's son does not make this your problem. Comment 2. When a relative calls berating you for not housing your mother, your only response should be, "I'm so glad you called and that you're so concerned. I'll let mom know you've offered her lodging. Please reach out to her directly to make arrangements." Not the idiot. Now for the update. Hey everyone, it's been a busy 2 weeks since my last post. Thanks for all the support and advice. I'll just dive right in. So my mom showed up at my doorstep with her bags, expecting to move in. I told her no, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. She started making a scene, yelling and crying, saying I was an ungrateful daughter. My neighbors were starting to stare, so I let her in to avoid a bigger scene. Big mistake. She immediately started trying to take over, criticizing my parenting, my cooking, my cleaning. She kept saying I needed her help, that I couldn't handle things on my own. It was infuriating. But here's the thing, she wasn't actually helping. She'd watch TV all day while I was at work, leaving dirty dishes and laundry piled up. When I confronted her, she'd play the victim, saying I was too hard on her, that she was still grieving her husband's death. I tried to be patient, but it all came to a head when I caught her going through my private documents. She found my divorce papers and started asking all these invasive questions. I snapped and told her she needed to leave. She refused, saying she had nowhere else to go. I reminded her that I had offered to help her find a place, but she had refused, insisting on moving in with me. She started crying, saying I was abandoning her, just like everyone else had. I felt guilty, but I knew I had to stand my ground. I called my brother and asked him to come over and help me get her out. He did, but not before she caused a huge scene, screaming and crying as he practically dragged her out the door. Since then, I've been getting nonstop calls and texts from family members, saying I'm a terrible daughter for kicking her out. My aunt even showed up at my work, causing a scene and embarrassing me in front of my coworkers. I'm at my wit's end. I know I did the right thing, but the guilt is eating me up inside. I keep thinking about how alone she must feel, how scared she must be. But then I remember all the times she wasn't there for me, like when I got pregnant at 19 and she told me I had ruined my life. Or when I got divorced and she said it was my fault for not being a better wife. I realize now that she's never really been a mother to me. She's always put her own needs first, expecting everyone else to take care of her. And I'm done enabling that behavior. I've decided to cut off contact with her, at least for now. It's not an easy decision, but I know it's what I need to do for my own mental health and for the sake of my family. I'm also going to start seeing a therapist to work through some of these issues. I realize now that I have a lot of unresolved trauma from my childhood that I need to deal with. It's not going to be easy, but I know I'm making the right choice. I need to put myself and my family first, even if that means cutting off toxic relationships. Thanks for listening, everyone. Writing this all out has been therapeutic in a way. I appreciate all the support and advice, even if I haven't been able to respond to everyone individually. I'll keep you all updated on how things go. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and remember, it's okay to put yourself first sometimes. Am I the idiot for siding with my parents when they ignored my fiance's calls after she broke her leg? My fiance, Allie, 31-year-old female, is the type of person that calls people 2 or 3 times in a row when she wants to get a hold of them for anything. The first time she did this to my parents, we were driving to a concert and I asked her to call my folks from my phone. She called, they didn't pick up. She started calling my mom again right away, and I asked what she was doing. My mom picked up right away worried. Allie asked our question. I told mom false alarm, hung up. She asked why my mom had been irritated, and I explained to her that in my family, we only call twice in a row if it's an emergency. Allie has never followed this and will always call them repeatedly for the most mundane stuff. If one doesn't answer, she'll sometimes call my other parent. All that to say, a couple of weeks ago, she broke her leg while working around the house. I was in a workshop for work that day and could only check my phone on breaks. She called my parents since they live a couple streets over, but neither answered their phones. She wound up having to call an ambulance. I got her message about 2 hours after she fell and went to the hospital. She was pretty mad at my parents when I got there. I let them know what happened, and they also rushed to the hospital to apologize and check on her. She didn't want them coming in, so they sat outside for a bit, got her flowers from the gift shop, and eventually went home. I took some time off work to take care of her, and my parents have been offering help as they could. Her sister drove in to help so I could go back to work. Last night, I decided to make a nicer dinner than usual and wanted to invite my parents. I gave her a heads up that I was inviting them and asked if she wanted me to rearrange some of the chairs and table so we can all eat together. She got mad that I wanted to invite them and is of the mind that I shouldn't be wanting to see/speak with them after they ignored her. Her sister agrees with her and feels I'm putting my parents over my soon-to-be wife. Up until this point, I haven't said anything to her about the situation, but I did then and told her it was a massive fuck-up in communication on everyone's part and time we all talk it out to put it behind us. Neither she nor her sister thinks she should stop being mad at them. Was I a jerk to invite my parents over? Additional info, my parents were sitting outside for their quiet time when she called. It's not unusual for them to not answer calls, texts, and wait to return them later when they do that. I myself had to do the 2 calls routine, so they knew it was urgent. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Everyone is focusing on the double calls, but even if that wasn't an issue, it's just as possible that the parents missed the urgent call. They could have been napping, watching a show, doing yard work, etc. I see no part of the story that shows the parents willingly, knowingly, or maliciously mistreating your fiancé. To punish them over it is deeply out of line and not fair to anyone else in this situation. Most likely your fiancé felt scared, and it escalated when she couldn't reach anyone to help. I would not focus on the double call situation, but on her being hurt and unable to reach anyone in an emergency. Arguing over phone habits isn't going to resolve any of this, and from her perspective, it feels like she is getting blamed for feeling alone and scared. Comment 2. Not the idiot, not the jerk. I explained to her that in my family, we only call twice in a row if it's an emergency. Allie has never followed this and will always call them repeatedly for the most mundane stuff. If one doesn't answer, she'll sometimes call my other parent. Has she never heard the story of the boy who cried wolf? She intentionally chose a pattern of behavior that ensured they would not assume she was calling for emergency assistance. Now she is angry that they behaved as they did because of her past behavior. It is regrettable, but it is her fault. She needs to accept responsibility for her own choices. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, it's been a while since my last post and a lot has happened in the past month. After Allie broke her leg, things got pretty tense between her and my parents. She was still upset that they didn't answer their phones when she needed help, and her sister being here only seemed to reinforce those feelings. I tried to smooth things over by inviting my parents over for dinner, hoping we could all talk it out and move past this misunderstanding. But that backfired big time. Allie got really mad when I told her I wanted to invite them. She felt like I was taking their side and not supporting her. Her sister agreed and accused me of putting my parents before my fiancé. I tried to explain that it was just a miscommunication and that we should all sit down and clear the air, but they weren't having it. Allie said she wasn't ready to forgive them yet and needed more time. I ended up canceling dinner with my parents, which only made things more awkward. They felt bad about the whole situation and wanted to make amends, but Allie wasn't ready to see them. I was stuck in the middle, trying to support my fiancé while also maintaining my relationship with my parents. As the weeks went by, the tension only grew. Allie's sister went back home, but not before telling me I needed to man up and stand by Allie's side. I knew she meant well, but it only added to the pressure I was feeling. Allie and I started arguing more, mostly about my parents and how I was handling the situation. One night after a particularly heated argument, I made a mistake that I deeply regret. I accused Allie of overreacting and not being willing to see things from my parents' perspective. I said she was being stubborn and holding a grudge over something that wasn't intentional. As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I had messed up. Allie was hurt and angry. She said I was dismissing her feelings and taking my parents' side over hers. She reminded me of how scared and alone she felt when she broke her leg and couldn't reach anyone. She said my parents had always been distant and unresponsive, and this incident only confirmed her fears that they didn't care about her. I tried to apologize and explain that I didn't mean it the way it came out, but the damage was done. Allie said she needed some space to think things over. She packed a bag and went to stay with a friend, leaving me alone in our apartment. I was devastated. I knew I had screwed up and potentially ruined the best thing in my life. I tried calling and texting Allie, but she wouldn't respond. I even reached out to her sister, but she said Allie needed time and I should respect that. As I sat there in our empty apartment, I started reflecting on our relationship and the events that led us here. I realized that Allie and I had never really talked about my parents and their role in our lives. We had different expectations and communication styles, and it was causing a rift between us. I also thought back to my childhood and how my parents had always been a bit aloof and distant. They loved me, but they weren't the most emotionally available people. I had gotten used to their way of communicating, but I could see how it might come across as uncaring to someone like Allie. After a few days, Allie finally agreed to meet with me to talk. We sat down at a coffee shop and had a long, honest conversation. I apologized for what I said and acknowledged that I had been insensitive to her feelings. I told her I understood why she was upset with my parents and that I would support her in whatever way she needed. Allie opened up about her own family history and how she had always longed for a close, supportive family. She said my parents' actions, or lack thereof, had triggered some deep-seated fears and insecurities for her. She apologized for shutting me out and said she wanted to work on our communication as a couple. We agreed to take things slow and focus on rebuilding our relationship. We also decided to have an honest conversation with my parents about our expectations and boundaries going forward. It wasn't easy, but it was a necessary step in moving forward. Now, a month later, things are starting to improve. Allie's leg is healing well and she's back at work. My parents have made an effort to be more present and responsive, and Allie is slowly starting to forgive them. We're taking things one day at a time and learning to communicate better as a couple. Looking back, I realized that this whole ordeal taught me some valuable lessons about relationships, communication, and family dynamics. It wasn't easy, but I believe we'll come out stronger on the other side. Thanks for reading and for all your support during this challenging time. It means a lot to have a community to turn to when things get tough. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.